the Sicha, learning about Yitzchak, based on the first verse of Parshas Toldos. Ve'ela Toldos Yitzchak ben Avram, Avram holed Yitzchak. These are the generations of Yitzchak, the son of Avram. Avram begot Yitzchak. And the question is, why the double language? If you're telling us that Yitzchak's the son of Avram, you don't also have to tell us that Avram is the father of Yitzchak. And that's when we have all the commentaries come in questioning. The Torah doesn't just throw words around. There's no extra words in the Torah. Why the double language? And the conclusion we come to is because Yitzchak and Avram looked exactly alike. Why they look exactly alike? Because it took so long for Avram and Sarah to have children. No one should doubt his lineage. Yitzchak is the son of Avram. He's not just growing up his house. Avram is definitely the father of Yitzchak. They look exactly alike. What we come with that is that it's not that they looked alike in their physical features, but they were very much alike in their divine pathways, their paths of service, which is an interesting thing because we know the forefathers in general, each one represented a different attribute from the main attributes. The right side, which is love. Love is the internal emotion, and how does it physically manifest? Through kindness. Kindness is the manifestation of love, just doing and giving and muchness. And then yira, which is fear or awe, that's the internal emotion. How does that manifest? Through what we call gvura, which is severity, restraint, withholding. Also might. Abraham is chesed. He's the epitome of kindness. Yitzchak is the epitome of gvura, strength, severity, etc. Actually, Yaakov was the epitome of compassion. Tiferes, the blending of the two. You're telling us that they were exactly alike, not just in features, but also in their divine pathways. It seems like they were not, because Abraham represents kindness. Yitzchak represents gvura and severity. This is not the same thing. And then we said not only that, but when you look at the name of Yitzchak, Yitzchak's name seems to lend itself toward all the attributes of kindness, which would actually emphasize the fact that because it's in his name, that means it's actually a part of him, an essential part of him. We see that he was born on Pesach, which is Avram's holiday. Avram is connected with the holiday of Pesach, so that's kindness. His name derives from laughter, which is definitely not a thing of fear and severity and things like that. He is associated with greatness, which is expansiveness, which is a side of chesed, the opposite of restraint and withholding. And we see when Hashem says, I'm going to multiply Avram, and I gave him Yitzchak, multiply the same idea of expansiveness, which seems, again, an attribute of chesed, not of gevura. We also have an additional, make sure to mention here, everyone has all the attributes in them, but there's one attribute that's going to be more dominant within you according to the root of your soul, where your soul is connected to. Abraham obviously is more dominant is kindness, chesed and ava, love. For Yitzchak, what's more dominant is yira, the fear aspect, gvura, severity, withholding, restraint. However, we see that there are times you have to tap into what's not your dominant trait. And we saw that with Abraham when it came to that Kedah, which is the sacrifice of Isaac, the angel calls him that we now see that you are God-fearing, that you fear God. And it's not just saying you fear God in kind of like the generic religious sense, but that when it comes time to tap into yira, when it comes time that you have to do something that goes against chesed and ava, kindness and love, you tap into the right thing. You know how to rise up to it. You know how to make it happen. That's what the Alter Rebbe says. We all have all of it inside of us. We have to know when's the right time. Sometimes we have to tap into what's not our dominant trait. So it's not to say, this isn't me, I'm not going to do this. We have to know how to tap into the other side, other parts of us. Then we got to the whole thing about redefining what this word gvura is, not just severity. When we talk about something that's might, restraint, etc., where does true strength come from? Ezu Gibor, who is mighty, who is strong, someone who could control himself. As in the withholding, the pulling back. They were saying today, if someone says something to you and you want to lash out to them in anger, biting your tongue, that's an attribute of restraint, which is might. You have to be a very strong person to be able to hold back. In a negative or positive situation, to be able to hold back when is needed, control over your own self, that is what true strength is. All this to say, but we said that they look alike. And they weren't just physically alike, but they were alike in their attributes, which means that there has to be something fundamental to this pathway of Yitzchak that actually is chesed, that actually is kindness, which eventually is going to lead us to how yira, fear and awe of God, can actually lead us to a higher level of love of God. So how does that happen? Because we have the general idea that ava, love, engenders closeness. I, the one who loves, wants to draw close to the one who is loved. I have this great feeling of love within me. I want to draw closer to you. But it's I want to draw closer to you. My sense of self, my identity, is very strongly part of that equation of drawing closer to you. Versus, what does yira lead to? Fear, which is the restraint and the holding the self back. This leads to something that we call bittul, which is nullity. Pulling yourself in, constraining yourself, restraining yourself. Holding yourself back makes more space for whatever else is outside of you. That's your damn idea of submitting yourself to somebody else. That it's not about what I want, it's about whatever you want. So the examples that we have for that, we say there's like the relationship of the father-son, parent-to-child relationship. That is something that is love-based in the sense that because one is a parent and one is a child, that is what engenders the love between them. And it's specifically the identity of parent and child that awakens this love and draw close because of this love. Not just that, but when the parent gives love to the child is more rooted in their identity. That your parent loves you, you're stronger in yourself. Versus a servant to the master, the servant has to submit themselves to the master. The servant's identity outside of being a servant is not relevant to this equation because the fear base of it means that the servant sets himself aside, his self, the things that he wants and desires, whatever, and it's just all about whatever the master wants. And of course, we have that in our relationship with God, that sometimes it's like father to son and sometimes it's like master to servant. because I love you so much, I want to draw closer to you. And sometimes it's because you are the master, I make myself smaller before you. Thinking about the relationship with God as my father, you think about that more, that's going to awaken love for God and a desire to draw close. And thinking from the servant to master that I am only here to serve God, that awakens awe and bittul which leads to humility, that I'm making myself small before him. Not a humility where you become just a doormat that everyone can walk all over you, but a humility that prepares you now for opening up for what is beyond you. That because I've removed myself and restraining myself from this equation, I'm now opening myself up to everything that could be outside of myself. Here we're talking about godly revelation. Even as I am the one who loves, because I am a finite being, my love, as great as it can only be a limited, finite love. Versus pulling myself back, bringing back my limitations with me, means that I'm now open to the infinite, can now fill that space. So now I can achieve something higher. Yira is not, let me come and try to assert myself into the situation. Yira is saying, I'm going to hold myself back. I'm not a real factor in this equation, which now opens you up for everything else. You're not going to learn from someone else or get different opinions or anything from anybody else if you're only stuck within your own self, or if it's just about you trying to assert your opinion. We can see it in a practical sense, how pulling yourself back opens you up to all kinds of possibilities. Or like sometimes you get very frustrated and you're trying to figure out an answer to something or a solution to something. You know it's there, but you can't figure it out. And then somebody will come and say like the simplest thing and you're like, oh yeah, I knew that. You didn't think of it because you got so stuck in your own self, you limited yourself. And that's why you needed something from outside to come and break through that. Or like sometimes if you're in a really bad mood and someone could just say like a dumbest thing and then you start laughing. And once you start laughing, the mood kind of dissipates. It's the same kind of idea. Just the more you get entrenched within your own self and you just sink within your own self, it makes it harder to break out of yourself. Once I do that, I'm now open for so much, for something bigger than my own self. Even a genius, if they're only listening to their own self, they're stuck in their box of genius. How do you step out of that? Is that as soon as you open yourself up to what someone else is going to say, you've now gone outside of your own limitations. But going back to this, the whole idea of the servant to the master, specifically because he is a servant, he becomes a medium in and through which the power of the king is revealed. You say, oh, there's the servant of the king. You don't say there's the muffin man who lives in Drury Lane. His whole identity is just representing the king right now. Because he is a servant, he becomes a medium in and through which the power of the king is revealed. Entire existence is defined by being a servant of the king with no identity of his own whatsoever. The power he manifests is the power of the king revealed through him. Versifications. This is from the Torah. Hashem is speaking about Moshe, referring to Moshe. With him I speak mouth to mouth, and a vision and on riddles, and he beholds the image of Hashem. So why are you not afraid to speak against my servant Moshe? Ba'avdi vim Moshe. Rashi has a question on that. Ba'avdi, there's an extra letter there in the Hebrew. Rashi says, why is it using this phraseology against my servant Moshe? Scripture does not say Ba'avdi Moshe against my servant Moshe, but Ba'avdi vim Moshe against my servant against Moshe. It's introducing a new comma there. So not against my servant Moshe, but against my servant against Moshe. Meaning against my servant, even if you were not Moshe, and against Moshe, even if you were not my servant. Even if you were not my servant, you should certainly have feared him, and all the more so since he is my servant and the servant of the king himself. The Eved Melech Melech. The servant of a king is a king himself. Should have said the king does not love him for nothing. If you claim that I'm aware of his actions, same as or same previous ones. The servant of a king himself is this general idea that because you are representative of the king, you are now treated as a representative of the king. And that doesn't happen if you're showing up as Bob the Baker. That only shows up if I am here representing the king. So Bob the Baker has to be left at the door, and you show up as the servant of the king, as someone who has given himself over totally to whatever the king desires. Here another one from the Torah. Pnu sulachem vohar amori vel kol shchena barava v'har b'shvela uvanegev v'chof hayam eretz hakanani v'alvanan adanar gadol nar pras. This is describing Eretz Yisrael. Turn and journey, so he's giving now directions, and come to the mountain of the Amorites and to all of its neighboring places, in the plain, on the mountain, and in the lowland, in the south and by the seashore, the land of the Canaanites of Lebanon, till the great river, the Euphrates River. Rashi has a question, Adanar Gadol, till the great river, the Euphrates River. As far as we know, the Euphrates River is not exactly an Amazon. So why are we calling it the Great River? So until the Great River, we say that this is the Euphrates. Since the Euphrates is mentioned in association with the land of Israel, is referred to as great. Because we're talking about now the land of Israel, it elevated the Euphrates. A popular parable says a king's servant is a king. It's the same idea. Eved Melech Melech. Associate yourself with the ruler and people bow down to you. Attach yourself to one who is anointed with oil and you'll become anointed with oil yourself. Emphasizing this idea that when someone represents the king, it's not I'm myself and also I'm connected to this person, but I am here representing that person. You now gain elevated status because you are actually seen as being that person. Versus someone who's coming and they're just inserting themselves. To elevate yourself, to become greater, you put yourself aside and you open yourself up to something bigger than yourself. It's like if you've ever been associated with some big cause, whatever big project or something you worked on or something, when it's not about you and it's about the cause, you sense the difference of it. We are all in this for this greater thing. That's why nobody likes a diva. Because we're all here to put on the show together. All of us are needed here right now. Which leads us now adding a new dimension. This is from the end of the Amidah. The last paragraph we say at the end of the Midah before Oseh Shalom. Elokai nitzar l'shani mira, sosai daber mirma, My God, guard my tongue from evil, and my lips from speaking deceit. To those who curse me, let my soul be silent, and may my soul be like dust to all. Open my heart to your Torah, and may my soul pursue your mitzvah. Put in the whole beginning part of there, just for reference sake. The part that the Sicha is referencing is Benafshi ka'afar, lakol tiyeh psach libi b'saresecha. May my soul be like dust to all. Open my heart to your Torah. These seem to be opposite expressions, saying, may my soul be like dust to all, as in, what is dust? Shakal dashin bo, that everybody treads upon it. When you have utter nullity of the self, then you are like dust. So much humility and so much nothingness. So that seems one aspect. By the way, a sidebar. Surprise! I have a sidebar. If you've ever heard, there's a great rabbi, Rebbe Zusha of Anapol. He was a contemporary of the Alter Rebbe. At the beginning of Tanya, there's a letter of approbation from him. So you can see someone who is very highly regarded. A lot of great stories with him. They say that he was walking once, and he bends down to the ground, and he says, "Oh, earth, now I am walking upon you, but we all know that one day you'll be above me." He's also the one that he says, after 120 years, or when I pass on, I am not afraid of the day that they're going to ask me, why weren't you one of these great leaders? Why weren't you Moses? Or whatever it is. Because I wasn't made to be Moses. I'm afraid of the day that they're going to ask me, why weren't you Zusha? Don't be somebody else. You have to be the best version of yourself that you could possibly be. He was considered a very, very humble person. Did I lead with that? I should have started with that. He was a very, very humble person. So it seems like saying, my soul should be like dust, that's talking about smallness, littleness, and open my heart, that speaks to someone's identity, because my heart feels and comprehends. My heart is receptive. Saying my heart, where all my feeling is at, that's identity. One, you want no identity, and one, you want yes identity. What is it supposed to be that you're saying, I should be like dust, but also open my heart to Torah? Why do you have this double language? One point is, if a person's preparations for grasping Torah entail only toiling with his mind and wisdom, then is ever capable of truly opening his heart to Torah. Torah is Hashem's wisdom beyond the reaches of created beings' intellect, so by his own power, a person can only grasp a limited dimension. Check out what's going on here. What it's saying is that if I'm coming to study Torah, and I'm only approaching it from myself learning, from my own capacity and capabilities, I'm not going to get very far. Because as a created, limited being, I can only achieve at the level of a created, limited being. Torah is so far beyond that. So I'm not even going to begin to comprehend and grasp any of it, because Torah is just beyond any sort of limitation of a limited being. Not just that. Look how far we're going to go with this. So this is from Tanya, Shar Yechav Ramuna. Alter Rebbe says, that is to say, God is high and exalted, Ramanisa, and very greatly elevated above the level of wisdom. God is above the level of wisdom, and it's not at all appropriate to ascribe to him anything that pertains to wisdom, even in a very lofty and sublime form. I.e., even if by doing so we mean to express how he transcends wisdom. God is so far removed from us that even saying, he's so above us, he's above human wisdom, even that doesn't describe him. These are paltry words that we're using to try to encapsulate God. For example, to say of him that is beyond the capacity of any higher or lower creature to comprehend his wisdom or his essence. For comprehension pertains and applies to a matter of wisdom and intellect, about which one can say that it can or cannot be understood because of the profundity of the concept. So even just saying, God is so great that even the highest of all creation, the greatest angels, can't understand him. This does not even begin to measure how great God is. However, concerning the Holy One, blessed be he, transcends intellect and wisdom, it is not at all appropriate to say that one cannot comprehend it because of the depth of the concept, for he is not within the realm of comprehension at all. Only the smartest, only rocket scientists can figure this out. God is so much above everything that even saying God is beyond comprehension doesn't even capture it, because what you're saying by saying that God's beyond comprehension is that, oh, he's beyond our comprehension, but there's somebody out here who could comprehend him. You just have to find a smart enough person. You just have to find a big enough angel or something. That being could comprehend God. No, nothing and no one can. So even using a word by saying that God can't be comprehended, you're trying to stick him into a realm where he doesn't exist, because he is beyond comprehension. He who states that it is impossible to comprehend him is like one who says of some lofty and profound concept that it cannot be touched with their hands because of the depth of the concept. Oh, you know why you don't get the theory of relativity? Because you can't grab it in your hand. What does that mean? Why are you talking like this? It's the same idea with God. All of creation is rooted in the wisdom of Atzilut. It's the highest world. Nevertheless, even the supernal wisdom of Atzilus is considered as an action in relation to God, for God transcends it infinitely. So even if you go up to the highest realms where everything comes from, God infinitely transcends that highest realm, because that highest realm is still this created entity. God is so far above it. It is thus impossible to say that God can or cannot be apprehended through intellect, inasmuch as intellect and wisdom are not at all the means by which God can be grasped. God is so far removed from intellect that you can't even use such words to try to say God cannot be understood by intellect. God doesn't enter the realm of intellect at all, as far as our intellect. Thereby, so because he is so far removed, me coming in with my great mind and saying, oh, I'm going to understand stuff, where do you think you're going with that? You're not going to get very far with that. You're trying to hold a moonbeam in your hand. It doesn't work like that. However, becoming as dust to all, as in if I make myself like dust to all, he's fit to receive and understand Hashem's Torah, even more with an open heart to grasp Hashem's Torah, as it transcends mortal intellect. Opening the heart devoid of any sense of self would prevent him from grasping Hashem's Torah as it transcends the world. Now he'll focus on opening his heart in a holy way. So how do you actually open your heart? It starts with being like dust, as in understanding how God is so far removed, So I'm not even going to try to be inserting myself into this because I'm finite. I can't. Instead, I approached her by saying, this is God's word. Let us just open ourselves up to God's word. Now we can open the heart up in the correct way. This whole idea of the bittul making yourself smaller is the precursor. It's the first step in actually getting to a higher level. How do we see that with Yitzchak? Because Simcha parts together, joy breaks through all barriers. Especially in Hasidic and Chabad Chassidus philosophy, the lower you feel, the greater your joy should be. You have to increase in joy because joy can break through anything. That is the only thing that joy can elevate you above your situation. It seems counterintuitive. Chabad philosophy is you're going to try to take it, we're going to double down on the joy. Not because we're in denial, but because it's the greatest display of faith to be truly joyous. You know that everything's in God's hand and he's taking care of everything. Why would you not be happy about that? There's no one more qualified than he is. It's the general idea about joy breaks through all barriers, that is specifically when we feel like things are going against us. There's so many letters where the Rebbe exhorts someone, don't fall down, don't be sunk. You got to increase in the joy. Yitzchak's awe, as in the pathway of awe of Yitzchak, is a preparation for happiness and an open heart, which can only come from bittul. The name Yitzchak, which is a name of tzchok and simcha, tzchok is laughter and simcha joy, it talks about an expansiveness that's beyond all bounds. The bittul and year of Yitzchak reveals an intensified vitality and true expansiveness of holiness. What are we saying with all this? Where did all this get to? Specifically, the fear of Yitzchak, this pathway of fear of Yitzchak, is what actually leads to an increased level of joy. It's in the name. His name is laughter. Laughter is an outward display of joy. And it's not just an outward display of joy, but it's a bubbling up of joy. It's so big, you got to let it out. It's a great expansiveness is what laughter is. So how could Yitzchak, who's supposed to be representing this pathway of awe and fear, be saying, no, he's exactly like Avram in chesed, love, kindness. And not just that, his name is Yitzchak, which is laughter. And we know that it comes from an expression of joy. How can we say that when he's supposed to be indicative of awe and fear? Because specifically, this pathway of awe and fear leads to an even greater joy than we could have had before. Why? Because through the restraint of our own self, we are now open to what is bigger than ourselves. Always inserting yourself and being sunk in your own self, you are closed off now to anything that is possible. But restraint, pulling yourself back allows for greater expansiveness. Because what is beyond your own limitation is open to you now. Thereby, the greater expansiveness means that we're now open to God's infinity. Anything can be. Everything is so much bigger than what it was before. And what it would have been in our own limitation of chesed, nava, etc. Ve'ela Toldos Yitzchak ben Avram, Avram Parshas Yitzchak. These are the generations of Yitzchak, the son of Avram. Avram begot Yitzchak. What do we mean that they were so alike? Yitzchak's divine service through awe was a means of drawing closer to Hashem, but without the limitations of finite capacity of created beings. As in, if we say that love is all about drawing closer to someone, I love you so much I want to draw closer to you, how could fear make you draw closer? Specifically because you withhold yourself, that actually allows you to reach a higher level of closeness. Because it's something that would have been beyond what you would have been before. Now, chesed is also characterized by bittul. Fear is actually love, while love is also fear, etc. So chesed is also characterized by bittul, as in chesed, kindness, can also lead to the smallness of the self, but it doesn't compare to the level of Yitzchak. And Avram answered and said, behold, now I've commenced to speak to the Lord, although I am dust and ashes. Avram is the one who said, I'm dust and ashes. So Avram, who's chesed, and he's kindness and love and expansiveness, but he's also saying, I am dust and ashes. This is actually right when he talks about Sodom and Gomorrah. Who am I to speak before you to try to question your ways? Even Avram has this level of the smallness of the self, even though he's all about expansiveness and kindness and giving, but it's not the same level of Yitzchak. Yitzchak, as the son, took it to the next level. This is from Tanya. The Alter Rebbe wrote a letter after he was released from his imprisonment. It begins with Katonti b'kol hachasadim b'kol ha'emes. Yaakov said this. I have become small from all the favors and from all the truth. Yaakov is saying, God has done so much for me, I have become small from it. What does that mean that he became small from it? So these words were said by Yaakov as an introduction to his plea that Hashem save him from Esav. Although Hashem had previously assured him that he would accompany and protect him wherever he went, Yaakov feared that all the kindnesses already shown had made him small, as in reduce his merits. He feared being in a state in which he would have to ask Hashem anew, save me. When Yaakov was about to confront Esav, or Esav about to confront Yaakov, etc., so he's finally left Lavan's house, he ran away, then he came after him, etc., etc., etc. We're at the part now where Yaakov is about to see Esav after 22 years, and is he still mad about the blessings that I took, and what's going to happen, and he's bringing a whole army with him, etc. So Yaakov says, I've become so small, as in, one way to see is that all my merits have been so reduced because you've done so many kindnesses for me. This means, Rashi comments that I've become small as a result of all the favors and all the truth, i.e. my merits have diminished because of the favors and truth you have done with me. Ramban, Nachmanides, not Maimonides, argues that this comment is inconsistent with the language of the verse, which states that I have become small. He says, Katonti means I have become small, not all my merits have become small. Ramban, Nachmanides says, I have become small, not that the speaker's merits have become small, there is a diminution in quality rather than in quantity. Ramban therefore understands I have become small to mean I am unworthy of receiving all of your kindness and truth. Thus, according to Ramban, I have become small is not a result of Hashem's kindness and truth, but rather an expression of the speakers being unworthy of receiving Hashem's kindness and truth. So it's not Yaakov saying all my merits have run out, it's saying I'm so small before you. The Alter Rebbe explains this first according to Rashi from all the kindness simply means that it was the kindness that made Yaakov feel small. Simultaneously, I've become small refers to the speaker himself. It is he himself who has become diminished as a result of Hashem's many kindnesses and his truth. Not only have the particular person's merits become lessened, which results in his diminishment, but he himself is directly affected as a result of the kindness and truth. Although it was the person himself and not the tally of his merits that has become diminished, nonetheless, this diminution is a result of the kindness and truth. Going back and forth about is the merit small, is the person himself, I have become so small. You have done so much for me, I feel so small before you. It seems like this is where we're going with it. I have become so small because you have done so much for me. That with every single favor that Hashem bestows upon a man, he ought to become very humble. For the supernal sphere of chesed is the right arm, and the scripture states, his right arm embraces me. Humility and the smallness of the self is also related to kindness. And here we see that Yaakov said, Katonti, that I become small. Each time God does a kindness for us, that shouldn't inflate us, that should make us feel so small and humble. Think about it, when you feel so grateful to someone, I'm so grateful to you right now, you're not feeling a great expansive ego in that moment. It's not, oh, of course you should have done this for me. Hey, look at how much you're doing for me. It's, wow, you did this for me? I appreciate it so much. It's a smallness before the greatness that has been done for you. The right arm embraces me, which refers to the state of Hashem actually bringing him close far more intensely than before. Every divine act of chesed brings a man closer to God. So every time God does kindness for us, that brings us closer to him. And whoever is brought exceedingly close to Hashem and raised aloft to great heights ought to be ever humbler to the lowest plane. That's Rebbe is saying that the greater the kindness, the smaller a person should feel. As it is written, from afar as Hashem appeared to me, when Hashem appears to an individual through a particular manifestation of kindness, this should make him perceive himself in relation to Hashem as afar, humbly distant from him. Usually kindness makes us feel closer to someone, but here, yes, we do feel closest, but also we're feeling smallness in the closest. Alternatively, the verse may be implying that perceiving oneself as afar is the very means by which to attain a state in which Hashem has appeared to me. And as is known, all that are before him are esteemed as nothing. Before God, everything is nothing anyway. So God doing a kindness for you, God, great infinite God, has done this for me. Who am I to have received this kindness? It should increase the gratitude and the humility. Thank you. Thank you so much. Wow. A being of even the highest conceivable spiritual level is of absolutely no account as it is nullified out of existence in Hashem's presence before him. For nothing exists before Hashem other than himself. There's nothing before God but God. There's only God, there's only God. We're somehow this creature that God has created and he does a kindness for you. It's just, how many kindnesses? Can you even add in a day how many kindnesses? Therefore, whoever is more before him, closer to him, is that much more like nothing, not non-existent. Because everything is nothing before him, the closer you get to him, the less of a self you are. This self-effacing response to divine favors is the level of the right side of holiness and of chesed unto Avraham. 4, we're saying that Yitzchak is yira and fear and restraint, tzimtzum, make yourself smaller, all that kind of stuff. I am dust. Here we're saying there's also a root for this in kindness. How do we see this in kindness? Because when favors are bestowed upon you, you should feel smaller. And the closer you feel to God, the smaller you should also feel. This is coming from a side of kindness, of chesed, Abraham's side. The divine loving kindness bestowed upon Abraham, as it is said, you grant truth to Yaakov, loving kindness unto Abraham, who said, I am dust and ashes. The kindness that Hashem showed Abraham motivated him to attain the ultimate degree of humility that the statement expresses. Just as in the heavenly realms, the right arm of divine chesed causes recipients of the chesed to lose their independent identity and identity of the bestower of loving kindness, so too does it affect mortals upon whom it is bestowed, making them likewise humble and self-effacing. As in, we were originally saying that Yitzchak's level of fear and awe and making the self small leads to a higher level of love. In love also, there is a sense of making the self smaller, of nullity, of bittul as we call it. How do we see that? Because the more God does for us and the closer we feel that we're being, oh, God loves me so much, he's doing so much for me, this should make us feel smaller. Because the closer you are before God, the more part of the oneness you're becoming. Versus being someone who doesn't feel as close to God, then you feel more of a separation, with God forbid. There is not, but it could feel that way. All the kindnesses that draw you closer should make you feel much smaller. That great infinite God is doing all these kindnesses for me. This is drawing me closer toward him. I realize that I am much more subsumed, submitted to him. This is how nullity now is rooted in kindness. But that's the general idea of seeing through fear how we become smaller and through love how we become smaller. But still, Yitzchak's level of fear can lead to an even greater level of Ava, specifically through making the self smaller.